This video is brought to you by Squarespace. When it comes to websites, online stores, etc., there's no place to build a beautiful online presence like Squarespace.
Listen, I didn't think I'd be making this video. I didn't even think I was going to see this movie. I avoid Marvel movies these days, partly because I couldn't be less interested in these characters at this point, partly because I know exactly how the movie is going to look and sound regardless of who is directing, and partly because it's simply not the kind of movie I like to support when I go to the theater. But this was an exception, because I like Taika Waititi. I have liked Taika Waititi, and I heard this was an awful Taika Waititi film. Not only that, but I heard it was a bad Marvel film, and usually Marvel fans will do whatever it takes to defend even their worst. But my curiosity got the best of me, and I was like, how bad could this really be? This is one of the worst movies of the year. A movie that does not work no matter how you look at it. Let's get into it. As a comedy, I can safely say I did not smile once. Only time I laughed was when I got in my car and drove home because I was so genuinely bamboozled as to how this could have been as bad as it was that I started hysterically laughing. It's not even the kind of thing where I'm like, oh, it just wasn't my sense of humor. That Nick Cage movie from earlier this year was the furthest thing from my taste, but I can fully stand back and say that if it was your sense of humor, there is nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't an enjoyable movie for me. That happens all the time, but this was like the most unfunny comedy that refuses to be anything other than a comedy. Every line that was clearly meant to be a joke was not a joke. It felt like a movie full of placeholders. Thor would literally go, "The one that got away," and Korg would go, "That means escaped." And literally every joke in this movie is just a different version of that. The joke that's like, this is me acknowledging what this means. I'm playing it off like this whole thing is ridiculous. Look at how silly this cape is. Oh, we're superheroes. Let's make fun of that. And it's like, what is the joke? Rephrasing what is happening and what was just said? That's it? That's not a joke. That's just saying something offhandedly silly. It's not something you should fill a movie with. There should be a setup. There should be a payoff. There should be some sort of effort put into it. This is a comedy that doesn't require any interesting direction, takes the smallest amount of effort to write, and gets very old very fast. The humor is at its worst when they try to reference really dated memes, which is just kind of a cop-out. They're like, oh, we need a joke here. What was funny at one point? Like, there's a whole monologue at the top of the movie where they're like, Thor never skipped leg day. He went from dad bod to rad bod. And I'm like, oh, it's funny because he's superhero. But the absolute worst of the worst is the screaming goat thing. The first time they show up, you're like, oh, well, that's bad. I didn't know in 2022 we were still riding the screaming goat meme. And then they keep going with it throughout the entire movie. I imagine even the people who did find this funny the first time stopped laughing after the 12th time they did it. Korg is the face of these kinds of jokes. His character is pretty much useless to what is going on here other than butting in every 5 minutes to say some joke that nobody really notices. It just reads like Taika literally butting in to be like, hey, by the way, I'm not taking this seriously. You shouldn't take this seriously. These are superheroes. Remember, here's a funny joke about the superheroes because you're watching a superhero movie. Remember, don't take it too seriously. Turn your brain off. No effort is the theme here. Taika Waititi is the obvious example in that the direction and the script feel completely last minute. Everything about it, from the lines themselves to the themes the story chooses to tackle, are so shoehorned in that it's noticeable. And that's a bad thing because, you know, if the movie is entertaining enough, you can usually look past a lazy script and generic story. But you're watching this and you're like, oh, she has cancer. Love over hate. Way to really shoot for the stars with this one. The only people that I feel like would resonate with the bare bones story going on here are children, who I'm sure are going to see this movie regardless, but at the same time, the film is trying to be this self-aware millennial superhero movie with an edge to it where I'm like, would kids really enjoy this movie? Would millennials really enjoy this movie? It isn't edgy enough to be edgy. It isn't lighthearted enough to be for kids. Who exactly is this movie for? I guess I can really see middle schoolers getting a kick out of this, but I'm also like, they would just get bored, right? The actors, my God. Chris Hemsworth is fine. He isn't awful by any means, and he has a leading man charm that really works for me. He's one of those guys where I'm like, yeah, this is probably the right career for him. But Natalie Portman, what are you doing? She was so bad in this movie. She gave the kind of performance that you would see a host give on SNL on a bad episode. Like, never gets the comedic delivery right, although I can't blame her with a script like this. Never sells any of the emotional beats. Clearly feels like she's just getting the job done. If I didn't know this was Natalie Portman and this was my first time seeing her act, I would have been like, she is going nowhere in this business. Christian Bale is acting his absolute heart out, which is without a doubt the best part of the movie. It's sometimes cheesy, but I would take anybody committing and at the very least pretending pretending to care about the audience's investment over another self-aware one-liner joke about how Thor wants to fuck his hammer. Tessa Thompson does not look like she wants to be in this movie, and I do not blame her. Even the VFX, which you would expect them to get right given it's most of the movie, and it's made by the biggest studio in the world right now, are awful. These two shots have gotten memed to death on Twitter already, rightfully so, but most of the movie looks like this. I barely noticed those shots because when I was watching it, the whole thing looked incredibly cheap. The color grade on these characters feels really off. It feels like I'm watching a video game and nobody's in the same room. Heads are just floating and jittering in a really weird way. At their best, they are believable, but never cool to look at. Even Doctor Strange, a movie I really didn't care for either, had some really stunning VFX work that makes it all feel worth it. Thor: Love and Thunder really does not want to be the best at anything. They don't even really commit to the 80s aesthetic, which based on the poster and promo, I was actually kind of looking forward to. It only peeks its head in when an iconic rock song kicks off a fight or something, and then it cuts out like 20 seconds later, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot it was supposed to be an 80s thing, I guess. I left a lot more upset than I usually do, because clearly film is not in a good place, sure, but comedic filmmaking specifically is in a really bad place. And this guy is the leading guy for comedic filmmaking these days, and he made a really bad movie. This wasn't funny. It wasn't even entertaining. Like I've said, I like Taika Waititi. I know he's funny. What We Do in the Shadows is one of the best comedies of its time and is endlessly quotable. But this was just a colossal waste of time. A movie that doesn't accomplish anything, really. Oh, it sets up for another MCU adventure? Great. So glad I sat through 2 hours of setting up after we spent like 20 years watching that. Nothing gets me excited about cinema like a good setup movie. It's not a good comedy, it's not a good superhero movie, and it doesn't care. It's just a bunch of actors running around in outfits for 2 hours. I can't say I'm disappointed, as I'm definitely not expecting the creme de la creme with Marvel these days, but I'm definitely disappointed in the turn Taika's career has taken, as this is just kind of depressingly low effort for him. I do want to say it does suck ending on another negative note. I feel like I've made a lot of negative videos recently, and I want to just point you in some cool, positive directions. If you're looking for a good movie to watch, you should check out Cha Cha Real Smooth on Apple TV+, Marcel the Shell if it's available in theaters near you, and honestly, Elvis. It's a good time. So anyway, thanks for watching. Go watch Thor and form your own opinion, I guess. And before you head out, ignore whatever is going on back there. I want to thank this week's sponsor, Squarespace. Now, if you're looking to build a website for your blog, online store, portfolio, you name it, Squarespace is the best place to go to build your brand and do that. They have professional portfolio designs where you can create galleries for your work, as well as password protected pages for clients. As someone like me who works in film and videos, I love their video block feature, which allows me to showcase some of my favorite work in a way that looks really nice. Plus, they have a built-in mobile web designer, which makes it so that no matter what website you make, it's going to look good, no matter what platform you're on, while still matching your style. The best part about it all, though, is that if you go to squarespace.com/Karsten, which is my name, you can get 10% off of your first purchase. So really, there's no reason not to try it. So thanks so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching this video. I'm gonna go take care of this, and I'll see you in the next one.